leader is effective without the ability to make difficult decisions and being able to differentiate between a decision that can wait for more information, contemplation, and input, and one that has to be made right now with whatever you know in this moment, come what may. That is a quote by you, Brian, about making tough calls and how that is always going to be a part of good leadership or any kind of leadership.
That's right.
How you are willing to make the tough call is what makes a leader great or not. So you wanted to spend some time talking about this today because you have been through your fair share of tough call making over several decades at this point of leadership, not even just here at PCC and church life, but in family life and in life before church and all that. So you have a lot to say about this. And a lot of examples you could draw on.
Yeah.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about why this subject now?
Well, I think that so many people go into leadership without recognizing. Look, there's obviously a cool upside to being able to lead. You're getting stuff done. You're coordinating with a team. You love working with people, and all those things. And so on the one side is sort of the shiny stuff, and it feels real good and it looks real good. But it doesn't take long in leadership for you to realize there's a weight to it, and a significant portion of the weight to it isn't just about responsibility. It's also about the capacity that leadership inherently entails to bring with it challenges and difficulties. It is a part of life, but it's also particularly a part of leading things. You are the one that has to make the call.
Right.
And sometimes always the call has consequences. Sometimes they have enormous consequences, and sometimes that call is super hard to make.
Right.
No leader can accomplish anything of significance without the capacity to make tough calls.
Right.
I mean, that is a universal truth. It's not like a thing that might happen to you if you're a leader. There's a reason not everybody aspires to leadership.
Yeah.
And it is because people sometimes stand just inside the curtain and look at it and say, "Oh my gosh, this thing is hard." You're going to make some people. I have people who used to be friends. They're not friends anymore.
Right.
Because of the topic we're talking about today. Leadership has some really great things about it. You get to be a part of doing something that is moving the world, but it comes with it a certain weight.
Yeah.
And you have to be willing to live into it.
Right. The Bible talks all about, the responsibility that you receive when you're given a lot. When you're given an organization or a team or anything like that,
That's right.
You have been given, entrusted with a responsibility that requires more of you. Jesus even talks about that. And so you have had to make, as I said at the beginning, a lot of these.
A lot of these. And I hope we'll go through a couple of them. Yeah, we'll use a couple of examples for sure.
Yeah, but I'm curious where you would say, let's say just a scenario comes at you that is definitely going to require a tough call. And I know they're all different, as your quote at the beginning said.
Sure.
Sometimes there's maybe some time to contemplate the decision.
Right.
Sometimes you have to make it right now.
Yep.
And you have to be ready for both of those scenarios. How do you even approach a tough call when it arrives on your doorstep? Yeah,
so that's really what I want to get to, Elijah, is to talk about. So I spent some time today. I've made a lot of tough calls. I made a short list as we prepared for today, just thinking, well, what are some of the ones that I thought when I started making this list that it would take me a while. Man, there's been a lot of them. More than I realized. I mean, I made a list of, 8 or 10 of them in like 30 seconds.
Right.
So there's just a lot of them. And then I started to say, well, what would be helpful for the listener in terms of the mechanics of making a tough call? And that's really what I want to get to today. It's not a matter of if you're going to have them, but when you have them, what do you do?
Right.
And so I think we should if we could just have a conversation that maybe you anticipate a question that a listener might think.
Yep.
And just interrupt me as we go. So for me, the first stop on the train is always, I've got to pause and pray. Because ultimately, if you're a person of faith, I believe that God knows things I don't know.
Right.
And therefore I have to do everything I can to claim his viewpoint and his perspective. So I don't care how much of a crisis or how little of a time horizon you think you've always got time to pause and pray. Now, I'm not talking about maybe you don't have time to go away for a half-day retreat praying,
Right.
and maybe you don't have time to get on your knees and pray for 10 minutes, but I've always got enough time at least to turn my attention towards heaven and to say, God, this decision is beyond me. It's bigger than me. There are components of it I cannot see, but you see what I don't see. You know what I don't know, and I need you to instruct me here. So the first stop on the train is always a shift to make sure that I am putting this thing in its appropriate perspective. God is able to handle what I cannot.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, absolutely. When I would be curious, thinking what you just said about the listener, when is enough prayer enough prayer?
Well, that's a great question. And I think about people, the Bible talks about, it's an interesting question you asked. I didn't know that was coming. The Bible mentions prayer as a spiritual gift.
Yeah.
If you have the gift of prayer, which I always thought, I've always been curious about. Let's
Right,
not chase
yeah.
that rabbit too far.
Sure.
But if we're all supposed to pray,
Mm-hmm.
there are some people that are given this extra measure, this extra gift of prayer. We have a friend here that you know
Yes,
well, Anita
yes,
French. And
yes.
Anita is, man, I'm going to tell you what right now, if they called me today and said, you got cancer, my first call is going to be to Anita French.
Anita, yeah.
She seems
Please
to
pray over
have
me.
sort
Yeah.
of direct line access.
Yeah, right.
in a way that people think you and I do, but really
Right.
they don't
She
know.
does. Yeah,
Anita
yeah.
really does.
Yeah.
So, so Anita is one of these people that's just going to pray for long periods of time. She really has this spiritual gift of prayer. I think that how much praying is enough? Well, I don't know. I'm a pastor. I believe in prayer. I believe in connection to God. I certainly would never make the claim that you could pray too much.
Right. Yeah.
But I think you should pray. I think we should pray all that we can, but an awareness that God has also equipped, that He has gifted us as the decision maker or as the leader with influence. That's what leadership is. Influence. Leadership is influence. Nothing more, nothing less. Have influence over both the situation and the people around me. I must get engaged with them.
Right.
Jesus went away to pray, but he also fully engaged in leadership. And there were times when he would retreat,
Yeah.
but plenty of times where his decision-making paradigm happened in the moment, right now.
Right.
And we'll get to that. We're going to do a whole session on Lead Like Jesus, so we'll get to that. So I guess there's a sub-question here in that I ask is, how much time do I have? And if I've got the capacity to pray for a little bit longer, I like to be still. So the shortest prayer is, God, I don't know what to do. You can see what I can't see. You know what I don't know. I really need your voice right now. Amen. And then I get to it.
Yeah.
If I have to.
Right.
But if I don't have to, what I'd really like to do is stop talking but keep praying.
Yeah.
And if I can stop talking and keep praying, then God gets to do some talking.
Mm-hmm.
And if I have the time, that's really where I'm going to try to get to.
Right. Yeah. I was gonna ask a little bit of a follow up, and I think you just kind of answered it though. Have you ever been in a tough call scenario where you prayed and you essentially said, "God, I don't necessarily know what to do. All the things you already said. I know you know better than me, but I have to make it right now. So I'm just going to trust that you're in it."
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
The answer is yes.
Yeah.
And I think about the story of the Israelites. They're off into battle, right? And they're in a situation where they it looks like they can't win, and they have this moment, this very defining moment where they pause and they look towards heaven and they say, "God, we don't know what to do, but our eyes are fixed upon you."
Yeah.
And so and they can't just stop, right?
Right. And
there are moments where you can't just stop, so you just say, and I actually use those words sometimes. I'll say, "God, I don't know what to do, but my eyes are fixed upon you."
Mm-hmm.
And then you just have to trust that, if I can just really use some churchy language here, I just have to trust that the indwelling of the Holy Spirit in my life, who has granted me influence in this leadership position, is going to speak through me and help me make this decision that is honoring of Him and is what God would want.
Yeah.
Let's just tell the truth. In hindsight is what tells whether or not you were.
Yeah, that's
right?
true. That's
right.
true. Yep.
There was this place where I'm trying to think of it where it is. You might remember, but I distinctly remember the words. There's this place. Oh, I know what it was. It's Moses. He asks God for a sign, right? And God says to him, here's your sign. I'm paraphrasing now.
Right.
When you do what I tell you to do, you will worship me on this mountain.
Mm-hmm.
When you do what I tell you to do, you will worship me. So basically God says, okay, you want a sign? The sign will come retroactively. It will come on the back end.
Yeah.
Well, that's often how decision-making works in terms of tough calls. You make the call, your knees are knocking, you're hoping God is in it, but you won't really know until the back end.
Mm-hmm.
The proof will kind of be in the pudding, right?
Yeah.
And I've made some calls, if I'm telling the truth, that I looked back and I thought, I think I missed the voice of God on that one.
Yeah. Yep.
But for the most part, God gave you this position, or at least I'm going to assume God put you in this position. The call has to be made. I have looked toward heaven. I have asked God, my heart is right, and now I got to go. I got to do the best I can and trust that I've captured his voice.
Yeah.
I put some mechanisms in place to make sure that that this is not an ego decision. I do have some of that around. But most of the time, you are just trusting that God is in you, in it with you, you know.
And we've talked about the team in this series already. Like you're going to go to the team as well.
Yeah.
Where it's able, and
that's right.
If it's not immediately needs to be made, you're always going to bring it to the team as well.
That's exactly right.
Right.
And that's where the ego check is. Am I thinking about this right?
Exactly.
So the first stop on the train is always to pray. And I don't care what kind of a crisis it is. The shortest prayer takes a few seconds to reorient my life towards heaven, to recenter my life in the presence of God. I always have time for that. And I mean always.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Then we get to the second sort of step here, and that is for me this change of paradigm. I want to remember every step of the way that however bad this sounds, it might just be a defining moment for the people I lead or the movement I lead. It might just be a defining moment. This might be, as bad as it is, this thing right here, God might use it to do something amazing.
Yeah.
Even if it's still bad.
Right.
He is sure to bring something good out of it, right? Romans 8:28, God works all things for the good of those who love him and are called according to his purpose. So we know that God is at work. Always, always, always at work.
Right.
Even in a bad situation, I have to change my paradigm. Otherwise, because most of these things feel weighty, dark, bad, however you want to phrase it, on the front end.
They're called tough calls.
That's right. They're called tough calls for a reason. So what I want to do is I want to make sure that I have ordered my attitude that says this might just be a defining moment. Mm-hmm. So let's tell a story.
Yeah.
A few years ago, and I think we brushed up on this in an earlier podcast, but let me tell it now from the perspective of making a tough call. We had a pastor who's sort of my number two guy at our church. I trusted him. Our families did life together. I loved him like a brother, and he decided to leave ministry, but he did it in the most unhealthy way.
Yeah,
and hurt all kinds of people on the way out. He hopped on a plane, flew to meet a woman, had an affair, wrecked his life, wrecked his marriage, wrecked his ministry. There was just pain everywhere. And when I found out what happened, I had to decide his ministry with us was over. He had done so much damage, it was not recoverable for him to be on staff here.
Yeah.
That is not to say that God was through with him. I never felt that way.
Right.
I don't feel that way today.
Yep.
But there was so much damage done here that he could not stay. So the decision I was making was not whether or not, it was not a tough call that he had to go. That was the easy, super easy, no-brainer. There was only one decision to make. It really wasn't a decision.
Yeah.
The decision was, what do we do with the church? And here's where so many churches get in trouble. They take a situation like this and they're not completely transparent about it.
Right.
They sweep something under the rug. They try to keep it from going public. And gosh, how many times do we have to learn the lesson? The truth always comes out. It always comes out. And so trying to hide it is silliness. It's denial. The tough call I had to make was, what am I going to say to the church?
Yeah.
On the very next Sunday, I knew what we were going to do. I knew what to do. The very next Sunday, and we'll come back to the process in a minute.
Yeah.
I walked out on the platform. We did this service, and we kind of ended it early. I did a message, and it was about authenticity or something like that, designed for this moment. And I kind of got people nodding with me. Don't you agree that it's better for people to be themselves and be true to who they are and tell the truth? And all people are nodding with me. And then I said, I'm glad you feel that way. And I walked over to a stool that was sitting in another part of the stage, and I sat down on it, and I said, now we're going to put this into practice, and I need to tell you something that has happened. And I told pretty much everything I knew. I didn't leave anything to chance. The tough call was what will we tell the church?
Right.
There was a voice that said, we shouldn't say that much.
Yeah.
And I knew in my gut that the right call to make was to tell all of it and give rumor no place to go.
Yeah, exactly.
It ended up being, as bad as it was, a lot of pain, still hurtful today. It's a scar. It left a scar.
Yeah.
But I will say this, it was a defining moment for our church. It was a pivot point for our church. Here's what happened then. Our church knew that our people knew that PCC would not be the kind of church that tried to hide stuff.
Right.
That we would just tell it. And if it was ugly, and if it didn't reflect well on our leadership, and if it didn't reflect well on me, and if it didn't reflect well on our church, we were still going to be the kind of church that told the truth.
Yeah.
And there are folks here today that they might disagree with this or not like that or whatever, but what they love about our church is they don't have to wonder what's really going on. We're just going to tell them.
Yeah.
It was defining.
Yeah, it was.
So the changing of the paradigm is really important. And then we get from there, and then we have to say, well, now we got to figure out how do we make decisions. And part of how we make decisions is we always are going to, when we have time, when we have a paradigm that when we're in a situation where we've got a time horizon, then I'm going to get a team together. So if I don't have the time to make a decision, then to take a longer process to gather a team and get more information, then here's what I'm going to do. The first thing I'm going to do is what information do I have? What information do I have right now? And then I'm going to make the best decision I can based on that.
Right.
If the building is burning down, I don't have time to call the team together.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
What I got to say is, hey, man, go get some water hoses, call the fire department. Where are the fire extinguishers? Is everybody out of the building?
Right.
There's no time for collaboration.
Don't need a committee. Right.
So if you don't have time, we've had this happen several times in KidMin or in StudentMin where there's some kind of thing that happened. Lock-ins. Do we still do lock-ins, by the way?
Not really. I think there's been like one recently. But
for those out there that have done church life, lock-ins are like, aren't they like the bane of our existence? I don't know.
They are asking for trouble, although they are fun.
There's always some two teenagers that find a way to sneak out. They're in the car. The windows are steamed up, whatever. We got to find a way.
You didn't have to bring up a real incident. But,
whatever.
Yeah.
And we have to find a way to navigate this, whatever. You don't call the team together at that moment.
No.
You
go handle it.
You yank them out of the car and you call parents and whatever.
Yes.
But where you have a time horizon, so the first question I'm going to ask is, do I have time to take in more information? Do I have a little time? And if I don't have time, I figure out what facts do I have, and I'm going to make a call right then and there. Come what may, a call has to be made. If I do have time, now I'm going to gather a team.
Yeah.
My team, usually, and I'm going to get some data together. I'm going to put those trusted voices in a room. And here's an important step that a lot of leaders miss. I'm going to gather some trusted voices. I'm going to gather some data. And the first thing we're going to do at that meeting is we're going to agree on the decision-making paradigm. How are we going to make this decision together? Are we voting? Some systems require that.
Right.
Or is this Brian's call? I have asked you guys to come here. I really want to hear some input. I really want to understand perspective, the way that you see this. At the end of the day, I need you to know I'm going to make this call.
Yeah.
And I'm trusting that you're going to get behind whatever call I make. I'm trying to gather information so I can make the best decision I can, but this is my call.
Yeah.
You just say that up front. If you don't know what your decision-making paradigm is and everybody around the table doesn't know what it is, you might make things worse because they all think, well, Brian didn't do what I wanted him to do. I thought we were going to vote.
Right.
Well, so you just say it up front. Mm-hmm. The best for the listener who's interested in really studying this, I've studied a lot of great leaders and decision decisions that they've made and what's their process like. The best book I have ever read about this was George W. Bush's memoirs after he left the presidency. He wrote a book called Decision Points.
Oh, yeah.
And it is the best. I've read all the presidential memoirs of every president who's lived in my lifetime.
Yeah.
This is the best one because he gets into the nitty-gritty of how did I make this call? And there were calls in there that he made that were very controversial, like invading Iraq.
Right.
But what did I do? How did I get there? And it was helpful for me. It was informative for me to see how does this call get made. So an important step on the process is deciding what is the decision-making paradigm and making sure the team knows about it. And then we're going to agree or I'm going to make a decision or we're going to agree on the decision however we've set that up. And then the next thing that I want to do, if I have time, is I want to communicate with the stakeholders. So if it's back to the student lock-in, is it just those parents or are there other parents who we need to inform like this happened because teenagers tend to like talk a lot.
Sure. Yeah.
And
word gets out quick.
So in terms of our value of transparency, what I don't want is a parent calling me and saying, I should have heard about this from you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we're going to get out in front of it. We want to be in front of it, not to spin it, but to simply make sure that people feel like we have lived into this value that we want to be completely transparent. So who are the stakeholders about this decision? And I want to inform them first. So our church at times we've gone through some financial challenges, particularly when we built our first building. It was a complete and total nightmare. Mm-hmm. We ended up in a lawsuit with the builder. The church's finances were in complete and total shambles. It was a mess. We should not have survived it. But what I wanted to do was to once we made a decision about how we were going to navigate this, the first thing I wanted to do was to make sure I communicated with the stakeholders. In this case, it was the people who had given to the project.
Yeah.
I wanted them to know this is why we got delayed. This is where we are. This is what we're going to do about it. And if you have any questions, I want you to call me and ask me. So, and then there's a next layer. So the first layer are like the stakeholders involved in that particular thing. Then the next layer is, does everyone else need to know? Does the fuller body of the church, or if you run a business, we've had a problem with a particular employee. We had to make this decision. Does the rest of the company need to know, or do the rest of the employees need to know? Who needs to know about this? And it's usually not one thing, and it's usually layers. In fact, information gets distributed in layers. While we value transparency, when it comes to a personnel matter, there are things we can't say. We're not allowed to say outside of sort of a tight-knit circle in terms of cause. So you can tell your company, we had to let Bill go, but you can't always say why. Sometimes, you're limited by some legal restraints. You have to know that, but we want to get as much information as we can out to the broadest audience possible that needs to know. And so there's this whole communication piece. When we've had to make hard decisions, we have asked this question as part of the process: who needs to know, and how will we communicate it?
Yeah.
And then the next component would be, once you make a decision, you really can't look back.
Right, you got to commit.
You've got to commit to it. If you second guess yourself during the process, I think there's a healthy postmortem, way after the fact, after it's all said and done. You can look back and say, how could I have done that better? Did I get it right? If I feel like I missed the voice of God, how can I dial in better next time? That's healthy.
Right.
But once you've made the decision in the middle of it, you've got to commit to it. And the team has to commit to it with you. So Elijah, you're on our SLT. When a call is made on our SLT, we've agreed together we're going to get behind it.
Right.
Even if we argued against it, we're going to get behind it.
Yeah.
The unity of the team really matters when it comes to these things. And as I like to say, nowhere on the list of possibilities is devil worship. We're not talking about bad stuff.
Right.
We're talking about making a tough call. Part of why it's a tough call is because you could do a number of different things.
Right.
This is the decision you have to make. And then the last thing I would say, I guess before the postmortem, which is sort of the epilogue, is you have to be willing to take some hits. No controversial decision, by definition, means that everyone is going to agree. By definition, some people are going to say, that was dumb. Why did you do that? I don't agree. And some people if it's big enough, are going to leave because of the decision that you made.
Absolutely.
This most often comes for me, not exclusively, but most often comes when we have to let someone go. Because that person often has gained some relationships and some people like him or her, love him or her, and we want all that. But sometimes that person, either because the church is going in a different direction or because the person is not performing, and the people around that person who are part of that person's ministry or job, they usually don't know that the person isn't performing.
Right.
But letting them go is often painful, and I've had many hard meetings in my office with people who were just saying, "I just don't understand.
Yeah.
Why didn't you give them another chance?" They don't know. We gave them 20 chances, and aren't we a church? And we have to explain that we're stewards. We really have to. We're responsible with what people give to us. We have to be careful about it, and we're not ruthless. We love people. We always treat people really well if we fire somebody. They always get treated really well on the way out.
Right.
Because the Bible says, avoid all appearances of evil. I want to make sure that people, that we actually treat people fairly, even if the narrative out there is that we did not. I go to bed at night knowing that we did.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you're going to take some hits.
Mm-hmm.
And this happens with everyone. It happens with everyone in every industry. If you're a leader, you're going to make tough calls. I got a call one day from a pastor friend of mine. And you could tell his eyes were just glazed over. We were on the phone, so I couldn't see him, but you could just tell he was a deer in the headlights. And he had a small church, but a small staff. And one of the people on his staff basically mutinied, basically walked in his office and said, "The rest of the staff and I have decided that you're going to give us your resignation."
Wow. And
he called me and he said, "I don't know what to do." He was driving. I said, "Where are you headed?" And he's an hour or two away from here. I said, "Where are you headed?" He said, and he told me where. And I said, "I want you to turn the car around right now, and I want you to drive." And I gave him an address. And there are a couple of pastor friends that we knew him really well. And I called the rest of them and I said, "Drop what you're doing. We're going to meet at so-and-so's house. And we'll call him David. David's on the way. And we're going to meet with him right now." And he sat there, and he didn't know what to do. He needed some direction. I'm a leader. And he said, I really need help. And I said, "This is what you're going to do. You're going to craft a letter. We're going to help you do that right now. You're going to deliver it to this guy who walked in your office, and you're going to fire him today, right now." And that guy, that pastor, David, statistically should have lost his church. Like it should not have ended the way that it ended. But here's what happened. We helped him make decisive, real-time action in a crisis that had to be made. Tough calls had to be made right then and there. His church is thriving today. Multiple campuses, thousands of people. It's quite amazing.
Wow.
But the tough call had to be made. And in that moment, he just needed a few people around him to say, "This is the right thing to do."
Yeah.
And you'll save your ministry and you'll save your church if you do it.
Yeah. That's a great story and a good example of what can happen when you have the right people around you. I'm curious because you mentioned at the end there being willing to take the hits. I wonder if you're willing to share on this podcast. We're trying to be open.
Sure.
If you're willing to share, if you can think of an example of a tough call that you've made where maybe the hits that came were outsized compared to other tough calls you've made, and in what way did that affect you?
Yeah.
If you do think of a particular example, you could use that one to say, there was enough where I really considered, did I end up making the right call?
Yeah. Yeah.
Or no matter how big the backlash was,
sure,
I felt very convicted that it was the right thing to do.
Yeah. Well, I think for me, I'm trying to decide if I'm going to use the word mismanagement. I'll use that word. The mismanagement of the building of our Powhatan campus, which was our first building, was riddled with a series of tough calls that I second guessed all along the way.
Mm-hmm.
We were being taken advantage of financially, and the call that I had to make was, are we going to allow for the violation of the contract but we'll get the building finished? Or are we going to stand on principle and say, we're not going to tolerate this anymore, and we're going to terminate this contract?
Right.
I chose to do the latter. And the truth is, we ended up having to settle that. We went into the lawsuit. We had binding mediation, so we had to sit with this lawyer, and and we had to go through this binding mediation. Anyway, at the end of the day, we were right. I'm convinced today we were absolutely right. But the church was dying. So we had a building that was half finished. We were having to pay for it while we were still in a temporary location. The church grew impatient, and rightly so, because we should have been in the building a lot earlier than we were.
Yeah.
The building was sitting in the rain. It was kind of falling apart, half built, and we were losing the public war of words. So we were trying to hold integrity with the whole process, but the narrative that was being told in the community, and we were a small community at the time, was that PCC doesn't pay its bills. So subcontractors were being told, I could pay you, but PCC doesn't pay its bills, which was not true.
Right.
And that war was being won in that I had people coming into my office saying, we've decided to leave the church. And this happened one after the other. Family after family after family were saying, we're leaving, we're done.
Because you're not using our money well, or what we've been given, things like that.
And I was trying to not speak ill of others, but that was not being reciprocated,
right?
Which meant that people were buying the narrative that was being told to them, even though it wasn't true.
Because you weren't outwardly fighting back like crazy
so
to not disparage
that's right.
people.
That's right.
Right.
That's right.
Right.
So then I had to make the next tough call, which might be the hardest, or at least one of the hardest calls I've ever made. I went to our steering team, which really is the elected body of the church. They're our board of directors. I report to them. They have the power to fire me.
Mm-hmm.
I went to the steering team and I said, we are right, and we are probably going to win this lawsuit, but we will win without a church. And they were like, what do we do? And I said, we have to buy our way out of this. We have to settle this, and we have to pay him to get out of it. So at the end of the day, that whole process cost us about $1 million of money we did not have. And all kinds of outside. We had to live with the reputation for years. People outside of our church looked at us and said, yep, there's another church that screws people over and doesn't pay its bills and blah, blah, blah. And I lost some friends, actually lots of friends. And I had people in my face yelling at me. It was just brutally awful. And at the same time, we persevered. I thought you were going to ask a different question about the season. That was the season I went through. I just wanted to quit every day. I just begged God to let me quit. It was so incredibly awful. Just can't tell you how bad it was.
Yeah.
And yet, leaders have to persevere. We persevered our way through. I pushed through that season. God did not release me, even though I begged him to. And look at what I would have missed. We made a series of tough calls, and at the end of it, the church is thriving today. And part of it is because of the willingness to lean into the difficult decision that had to be made.
Right. And that's a great note to end on, because every tough call, when navigated well, always has the possibility, as you said, with the paradigm, to lead to something a lot better than it even was before.
That's right.
It can open the path toward somewhere you never thought you could ever be.
That's right.
If you navigate these tough calls well, which are going to come.
They are going to. It is not if.
Yeah.
It's not even when. If you're in one now, it's not like one and done.
Right.
Another one's coming.
Yep.
It's just part of leadership.
It's part of leadership. It's part of life.
Yeah.
So encouragement to you, listener, if you're in the middle of one, there is hope for the other side. So lean into these principles, navigate it well, rely on the power of God, pray, all the things that Brian talked about. If you have any questions about any decision that you are facing and you want more advice on this or whatever, just reach out to us. Just comment, send us an email. You can go to passioncommunity.com and reach Brian pretty easily there. But we would love to continue the conversation about it, as we will continue the conversation about leadership for a few more episodes in this series. As you mentioned, talking about Jesus's style and example of leadership which will be our next one.
There you go.
It could be 2 hours long. Who knows? But,
it should be. It won't be, but it should be.
Yeah, it won't be, but it should be. All right. Thanks, Brian, for being open, being vulnerable. A lot more to come on this. Hopefully you're enjoying it. All the things, like, share, subscribe. We're very grateful for all that you've done and listened during these early episodes. We're going to continue to improve. So thanks again for being here. Thank you, Brian. We'll see you soon.